Our REST API is ready and it is eagerly waiting to send the response to the UI application. As a next step, we should make some changes on the UI application to connect with this backend database. Once the connection is established, all the products information will be sent by loading the details from the H2 database. Inside the section 7, as of now, we have a Spring Boot application project with the name Easy Store. Inside the same section 7 folder, I'm also going to maintain our UI application code as well. Inside the section 6, we discussed all the core concepts of Spring. That's why here there is no UI application related code. If I go back to the section 5, here there is an UI project which we styled with the help of Tailwind CSS. Let me copy this easystore-ui and mention the same inside the section 7 folder. I'll open this folder inside my Visual Studio Code, followed by we can start making code changes. This is my UI application code. Here under the easystore-ui project, I'm going to create a new file with the name .env. env means environment. Inside this env file, I'm going to maintain a constant which is going to hold the base path of my backend application. Let me mention the constant name as wheat app API underscore base underscore URL, and to this I'm going to assign a value of http localhost 8080 API/v1. This will be the base path for all my APIs that my UI application want to communicate. This is the port number of our Spring Boot application, and all my REST APIs, they are going to have this prefix which is API/v1. It is always better to maintain these constants separately inside .env file. We are going to discuss more about the purpose of .env in the upcoming sections. For now, think like this is a constant which we are going to refer from our business logic to connect with the backend project. Once we have this API base URL ready, as a next step, we want to connect with the backend application. Let me open home.jsx. Inside the home.jsx, all the products are being loaded right now from the product.js available inside the data folder. So this is the data folder. Under the data folder, we have products.js. Seems I have created .env under the data folder, but it should be present under the root path of our easystore-ui. What I can do is I can try to select a file like index.html which is present under the root folder. Here now I'll go and select this plus button and create .env file. Let me go to this .env file and copy this content, followed by I'll open this and paste it here. Now we can delete the .env present under the data folder. Let me delete this and open the home.jsx. What I'm trying to say previously is we are trying to load all the products details from a product.js file available inside the data folder. But this is not going to work in real applications. In real applications, we need to connect with a backend server and load the details from the database. That's why we need to make some changes inside this home.jsx to connect with the backend server. Whenever we are looking to make a API call from the JavaScript code, there is an option fetch available in the JavaScript ecosystem. But when we use this fetch option, we will end up writing a lot of boilerplate code. This fetch has some drawbacks. Like every time we get the response, we need to manually convert the response into a JSON format, followed by we can process the response. Apart from manual JSON conversion, this fetch also is very bad at error handling. That's why inside the industry, most of the developers, whenever they are looking to make a API call from the JavaScript, they're going to use a library. The library is axios. Using this axios library, we should be able to invoke APIs very easily, and behind the scenes, it is going to take care of converting the response into the JSON, followed by it is going to perform better error handling. There are good advantages with these axios. That's why let's try to use the same library inside our application as well. To install this library, we need to run this npm command. Let me open my terminal and execute the npm i axios, and with that, a new package is going to be installed inside my application. To invoke an REST API with the help of these axios, first I need to create an instance of this axios by providing some URL details. But creating the instance of axios every time you want to make a API request is a very tedious job. because inside my application, I may end up invoking 50 different APIs by the time I end this course. That's why what I want to do is I want to create the instance of axios in a separate file, and the same can be imported in all the places wherever I want to invoke an REST API. So that's a plan. Let me remove this fetch, followed by I'm going to create a new folder inside the src. The folder name will be API. Under this folder, I'm going to create a new JavaScript file with the name API client. The name can be anything, but please make sure you are giving the extension as JS, because we're not going to write any JSX code inside this JavaScript file. First here, we need to import axios from the axios library, followed by I'm going to create a constant with the name API client. To this constant, I'm going to assign the output that I'm going to get when I invoke axios.create method. So with the help of this create method, I'm trying to create an instance of axios which I can leverage throughout my application. To this create function, we need to provide certain details about our backend application. The very first detail that we need to provide is base URL. This base URL we are maintaining inside the env file. To invoke the constant present inside the env, we need to use import.meta.env. whatever value that we have defined inside the env file. Let me open this, and this is the value that I have defined. Let me mention the same here. I'm getting an compilation error here. Seems I forgot to mention curly brace here. We need to define this base URL under the curly brace. After the base URL, I also want to define timeout details. So let me mention the timeout as 10,000 milliseconds. By mentioning these two details, what I'm trying to achieve here is I'm going to create an Axios instance which is always going to connect to this base URL, and it is going to maintain a timeout of 10 seconds. Since I have mentioned 10,000 milliseconds, the equivalent value will be 10 seconds. With these 10 seconds timeout, always my Axios instance, it is going to wait a maximum of 10 seconds to receive the response from the backend application. Within 10 seconds, if my backend application is not able to respond, the Axios instance, it is going to throw an error inside my UI code. And towards the end, I'm going to mention an export default statement so that anytime if I want to use the Axios instance inside my business logic, I can simply import this API client file, which is going to give me this API client as the default export. Let me go to the home.jsx. Here, I'm going to import API client. Now this API client, it is going to represent an instance of Axios. Using the same, I'm going to perform API invocation. Let's try to continue these changes in the next lecture as well.